And the right path is the understanding the true nature, the truth of whatever is now appearing. We don't talk about what we think about, imagine about last night and tomorrow, but what about now? If there's no understanding of this movement, how can there be any understanding of whatever it is? See, any moment, it's right to understand its truth as it is, because it does not stay, it's not permanent, it's gone so rapidly before we can know the nature of it. That it just arises, otherwise there cannot be that which now sees. So seeing this moment is real. Does anyone say that it's not real? Impossible at moment of seeing. Only seeing and that which appear is the truth of that very moment. So in order to understand the truth of life, of everything, it has to be able to know the truth of it from hearing and considering that we are talking about whatever is real, not just what we think or imagine. Can anyone imagine seeing? Impossible. But at moment of seeing, who can say that there's no seeing? And this is the truth, beginning to understand the truth of whatever appears, so that they can be less and less attached to the reality as something or I or someone, because it's that just in a moment, the moment before seeing, it doesn't see. The moment after seeing, it doesn't see. Only the moment of seeing, just one moment only in the process of seeing, which can see. So many things is unknown because not understanding the truth, not hearing the right word to consider whether what is true or what is not true.
Oh, muted. No. So ask about how can they separate seeing and what is seen from.
So how does somebody, when we say,
muted.
no, I'm not. When we say that, people say they don't, they don't understand. How do they know the moment of seeing? How can they say, okay, I've now understand this?
Think about the moment of seeing, that moment, where's I and where's who? And is there anything besides the seeing itself which can see? Only that object which impinge on it. Only that there's so many things around, but whatever is seen has to impinge on the eye base to condition moment of seeing right then. Who can know how many dhammas are there? Not only seeing itself, there must be realities which condi- condition moment of seeing, like cetasikas. That's why we don't know at all until we learn to understand the truth of whether that is true. Because can seeing alone arise by itself? Impossible. But there must be conditions to condition the arising of it. And the conditions can be at that very moment of seeing arising. It's there too, to condition moment of seeing right there, just in a moment. How many things unknown. And who can understand the difference between that which is seen and the seeing? They seem together, like now. Seeing and hearing, who can see that they are separated, different moments, because they are quite so close as the same moment. As seeing is there, there is hearing as well. So who can see the difference between the two different conditions to condition different reality, and what in between seeing and hearing? There are so many moments unknown until we learn to understand how come to be this moment of seeing if there's no other moment which experiences other thing. And then the moment of seeing is different from that. That's why before seeing, there's no seeing, but there must be other realities, which is a condition for seeing to arise too, because we don't know that the nature of that which can see, that what is there in it, the patya, the conditions in is there to any citta, that which can experience. So we have to understand what is seeing. Is there anyone at moment of seeing, or seeing itself just arise and see? So there is no one even then, and even before that, and even after that, because realities are only realities, different ones. For example, seeing is not that which is seen completely, because that which is seen cannot experience anything. But what we say seeing is a reality, absolute reality, because no one can condition to make it, to condition its arising. Only its proper own condition the moment. The condition is ready right then just to see. The conditions condition the arising of seeing. So when it say no more conditions, right, it falls away instantly. Because conditions condition whatever arises to arise, only that. But after it's arising, it falls away. See, by its nature, without conditions for the arising anymore, because it has arisen already. Who can do? But can there be the understanding of the difference between moment to moment? That even in a moment there are so many different things unknown until listen to the enlightened one. That's why we begin to understand what's meant by enlightenment, not only thinking by one's own thought, not the understanding the truth of that which appears. For example, visible object cannot appear without sees it. And what appears is that which seeing sees. So now in the day, so many things appearing all day. What how can it's there to be known as it's there without the reality which sees it? So the seeing itself, seeing that which is there, whatever is there, no matter through eyes, ears, nose, tongue, what is there is the object which the experiences arises just to experience that only one in a moment. Different ones all day, unknown. Because of ignorance, there is attachment and think about something like I or this or that or things. For example, as soon as sound appears, just sound, but the experiencing of sound, which is there, just arise to experience. And after that, there is the idea instantly. What's that? See, what's that means clinging to that to be known. What is there? So life is so very, very subtle. Each moment arises from swing in split seconds. So who can know without listening to each one as it is different from the others? And there cannot be anyone because hardness arises to be just hard. So can hard be I or something, or can be just hardness only? And this is Dhamma. The reality is all are not self or anything at all because of the short, very short for it to be just arises and falls away instantly, immediately, so rapidly. And the succession of each moment hides the truth that it's not there anymore. For example, now, Seeing arises just to see what impinges on the eye and then falls away. But there's so many seeings that seems that is seeing all the time. But there must be something after seeing which does not see and which does not hear yet until that arises follow moment to moment. And each chitta, now shall we use the word chitta for the experiencing, the leader, the chief of the experiencing, because there are other realities which can experience object as well. With chitta, not alone by itself, they are together as conditions, which Buddha told us about so many different conditions for a moment, for anything to arise or to be there. So each citta has one condition, the anantarapatya, which means that as soon as this reality which arises to experience fallen away, it the condition in that citta which has fallen away, condition the next citta to arise instantly, no gap. So how can there be the understanding of each moment of seeings now, different moment of seeings all the time? Is this real or truth? Nobody can do anything because actually there are only the reality which can experience and the reality which cannot experience. No matter in what world, what is there must be one of the two. That which experiences and that which does not experience, it cannot experience. The hardness, the smell, the taste cannot experience anything at all. That's why we understand what's there at the moment of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and thinking. In order to understand the truth that actually there are only different realities by conditions, not under anyone's control. No matter we take it for eye, where is it? It's gone, unknowingly. That which is seen does not stay long at all. Only after it's arising, it falls away. Because condition the arising. So when it arising, it has a reason, then it's gone. Because the condition only the arising of that reality. Without the conditions for that to arise, after it has arisen, it's gone because no more conditions.
So our friends say, well, how do you know if you are experiencing that or not?
And
And-
one at a time.
And one at a time. How can we give them confidence, or
Okay.
just learning the words, it doesn't seem to make a difference?
Okay. At this moment of seeing, just seeing, is there anyone there?
But they seem to see.
Well, they know they see, but they think, of course, it's I see.
Because there is thinking. Seeing cannot think that it's I. But after seeing, ignorance is there. And take that for something. If it's not me, it's the other person. Or if it's not me or the other person, it's something. The flower or the chair or whatever one thinks about, the bed and sky, sea. But that is not the moment of seeing. It's the other moment of thinking about that which is seen. If there is no seeing such thing, how can there be thinking about such thing? So when there is no understanding of what is it as it is, the idea of I who experiences is there. Because the nature of that which experiences that object, and then there can be ignorance attachment, and wrong understanding after seeing. So there is seeing. What is the truth? The idea of I see or seeing is just seeing and it's gone. So that cannot be I because the I is here, never go away at all. But the seeing is gone. So who sees? See, it's gone already completely, never to return. But because of the rapidity of the arising and falling away, it conditioned the idea of something always there. Life stays from day to day, from moment to moment, but actually each moment is gone. So where's the I and where's the life? Not understanding what is life, but the Buddha enlightened the truth of everything completely, exactly, absolutely, no change at all. That can be proven, can be understood. Even now, at moment of seeing, when there is the understanding that seeing sees, no I see, not no one see at all. If seeing does not arise, can anyone see? But whenever seeing is conditioned to arise without understanding that it's just seeing which arises to see and then falls away instantly, it conditioned the idea of I see. Otherwise, who sees? So it's I at moment of seeing, see. But in reality, where's the I? It's the experiencing, the seeing is I. It's gone completely. So where's the I at the moment of seeing? Where's I at moment of hearing? Where's the I at moment of thinking? So this will lead to understand the truth of that which appears without attention, interest to understand it as it is until hearing the words about that and begin to consider carefully, very carefully to know the truth that what is there in truth? What is there in truth, in reality? From
So,
the eye at moment of seeing, where is it?
Salty, Jan, and hello everyone. I think they're very good points, questions that Tom is raising on behalf of his friends. For those who came in late, like we did, it's I think he's asking whether his friends ask whether it's possible to know it's just seeing now and how this is known. And I think Jan's points are saying it all, because at this moment of seeing, how can it be anything other than seeing which sees? And if they say, well, it's I who see, then one can ask, well, what is this I that you think sees? Can this I be seen? No. Can it be heard? No. Can it be touched? No. Can it be thought about? Yes, it can only be thought about. So in other words, the I that seems to see is just in one's imagination. It's just at the moment of thinking, as Ajahn mentioned. So at the moment of seeing, no I there. It's just the seeing itself which sees. The thinking, the I is just thought about. And Bev's mentioned that they say, well, how can it be known? There's only one experience at a time. But at the moment of thinking, is there seeing at that moment? At the moment of seeing, is there thinking at that moment? Or are they different? At the moment of thinking with kindness, is it the same as thinking with anger, or are they different moments? So gradually, through questioning and considering, it becomes more obvious that actually there can't be thinking of kindness at the moment of thinking of anger. There can't be seeing at the moment of thinking. And the I, which seems to experience all these different realities, can only be imagined. It can never be found. Seeing can be known now because it's real, but the I, which they think is real, can only be thought about. It can never be experienced. So I think that by asking these questions and by considering more, people can begin to understand that there is just seeing at a moment of seeing, there is just hearing at a moment of hearing, and it is just the imagination which thinks and clings to the idea of an I that has all these experiences and has these experiences at one time.
And I think we can also consider that there has to be a moment of experiencing the visible before there can be the idea of a person or a thing that is being observed. Just like we can consider that there has to be the moment of experiencing sound before there can be the understanding of what's being spoken. So we know that understanding the meaning of what's being spoken is a thinking exercise, not a hearing, not a moment of hearing at all. But still we can consider that there must be that moment of just hearing sound or hearing just sound before there can be the idea of words being spoken or music being heard. And likewise with seeing, what we take for seeing now is probably thinking about the visible object that's been experienced, but we can accept, or we can consider, that there must be the moment of just experiencing the visible, that the mere visible object, before there can be the idea of seeing a person or thing. And as far as knowing that it's momentary, well, that just can't be verified at this point. So something of that deep level is obviously just for consideration. We can only say, well, is it consistent with our experience of the world? Even if we hold a different idea quite strongly, we can still be open to the idea that it might just be momentary. Is there any evidence, if you like, that this would disprove that? But a lot of what we hear cannot be verified immediately. It can only be the subject for further consideration. So that's why there has to be patience, and it takes a long time and has to be considered at length.
I have a question. I have a question about something that Ajahn said. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Hello?
Yes, keep going.
Hello?
We can
Oh,
hear
yeah.
you.
Oh, yeah. Okay. My question is, Ajahn said that we need to consider carefully. So I was wondering, what is it to consider not carefully? What's the difference between considering carefully and not considering not carefully?
When we talk about careful thinking or careful considering, it doesn't mean that we think about other things, but what is there is the object of thinking about its truth. For example, who knows what is the reality which is seen, because we take it the very rapidly arising and falling away of each one makes something appear, makes that which is seen so long as something like nimitta, shape and form. Is that right? But all the shape and form of just even one thing cannot impinge on the ibis all at once, but from moment to moment of experiencing the shape with different color, make it the different nimitta, shape and form with the idea of what is that. As a baby, they don't know at all what is there. But as they're experiencing more and more, memory remembers what is seen and heard and so on. And so it forms up the idea of something there permanently. And this should be careful thinking about what is the truth of that which is seen and what is the truth of that which experiences, to know that they are different. One can experience, and experiences mean that whatever is there is experienced by that which can experience it. The tree cannot experience anything. It doesn't feel hurt or anything at all because of no experiencing, no reality which can experience anything. For example, touching now, when there's no understanding of the truth of it at all, it's my leg, it's my hand. But when there is touching the pillow or the bed or the chair, there is the idea of not me, it's something different. But actually, hardness cannot be changed to other things. It is conditioned to arise, to be hard only, not smell, not color, but hardness. So that which is hardness, no matter where is it, when is it, what shape and form, there can be nobody can change it from being hard to other thing else. So the truth of each one is that it has its own characteristic to be known when there is experience, but without understanding the idea of shape and form, condition the idea of something. Hardness here is me, is my leg, and hardness there is a pillow. See, but hardness is hardness only. The truth of hardness is that it's conditioned to arise to be hard, cannot be other thing else, and then falls away instantly. Whatever is there by conditions has arisen and then it has to fall away because no more condition for it to stay. Because the condition the arising of that to be just to arise and then it falls away. See? So thus hardness also falls away or is still there, never fall away at all. Otherwise, how can it get old or damaged? See, that's why this is careful thinking about whatever is there in life in each moment. We don't careful thinking about other things else because it does not appear, but that which is now appearing. And from his enlightenment, Buddha enlightened the truth of each so much that he, after his enlightenment, what he said, Dhamma is so subtle, so deep, so profound. It's hard to understand, but it can be known when he taught. That's why he taught the Dhamma for the other to understand the truth that he had discovered or experienced or enlightened. So now think about that which appears. What is the truth of it? Is it a shape or just that which impinge on the eyeballs and condition the moment of seeing, just arise there and see and then follow it instantly all the time, which condition different shape and form as nimitta, and it made known to be something like people and things, pannati. See, so we live in the world of darkness with the idea of many things there, but actually nothing there at all, from moment to moment until death. By then, no more. But before that, each moment is just like that. That's why there is not just only the what we call this, the supposed one, but the momentary death of each moment. And then the death that everyone knows, and then the final death never to arise again. It's the citta of the arahata, the jutti citta, the last citta of arahata. Do not have condition to condition other citta to arise after it. This is considering or careful thinking about even now, just the word, what is seen. Does it appear as it is, that no one there, no thing there, only that which can impinge on the eye base. It cannot be anything at all. It's gone, and citta arises and falls away quicker than that. 17 moments is a moment of arupa, which has arisen to fall away. See, no one knows that, but from the teachings of the Buddha, one can consider his word. It's all about now, which cannot be known by oneself, but it can be studied carefully to know that actually seeing cannot see people and thing at all. Seeing can see just that, only that very, very tiny that impinge on the eye base and then falls away. It's just not true. Without the eye base, without the eye, can there be conditions for seeing? Without that which can impinge on the eye base, can there be seeing of that only which impinge on it? That's why even that which impinge on it is not known. Actually, where is it? Where is that? See, nobody knows. But Buddha said, whenever there are the four primary rupas, Patui Thatu, hardness and softness, Tejo Thatu, heat and cold, and Vayu Thatu, motion or pressure, and that which adhere, which hold the other three kinds of rupa, not to be broken, or it cannot be not together at all, because they have to arise together and condition each one, because they cannot be heat without the Patwi, because the Patwi has to be the base for heat and other reality. And they are for primary rupas and not just for, because as long as they are for primary rupas, there must be other rupa with it. That is the upadhyaya rupa. This visible object is there. That's why when there's no, for primary rupas, there cannot be the visible object. No one comes in yet. But when someone comes in, the Mahabhuta rupa and also the visible object, no matter we call it color or whatever, it's there. A reality which is the only reality which can appear in the world as that which is that which is seen now in a moment, just only one moment. Hardness cannot be seen, smell cannot be seen, citta cannot be seen. Nothing can be seen except only that which is now appearing at moment of seeing. So in reality, is the world dark or light? Different from much we think about, because it seems like there is light all there, but actually only moment of seeing is light. But the other moment of experiencing sound and smell or taste or whatever, it has to be dark. And this is the truth or not the truth. And this is a careful thinking, careful considering to understand whether the truth or not. It's not just belief, but from hearing and considering, it can bring about little by little to understand everything as dhammas, not anyone at all, not anything at all, only Dhamma is Dhamma.
And for me, Roti, the careful consideration implies that it is consideration that is without expectation of a quick result or outcome. It's consideration that is done with an appreciation of the depth and difficulty and subtlety of what is being considered. And so it's a given that there's not going to be any quick solution to what is being considered. So, for example, in the case of seeing and visible object that we were talking about earlier, people want to know how can I know whether it's seeing or it's a momentary consciousness or it's I who sees or whatever? This there isn't going to be a quick answer to these questions. But the first thing is to consider that whether it's momentary jitter or whether it's an I or whatever, there must be the experiencing of the just visible before there can be the recognition of people and things as the world, as we conventionally experience the world. And just by considering this, just like there must be the experiencing of mere sound before there can be the understanding of words or recognition of music, just considering this can be a condition for a beginning of understanding or appreciation of what the Buddha was talking about.
Sometimes people have the opposite problem to the one Tom mentioned. One says it's seeing which sees just which is visible, and they say, well, that's obvious, and yes, I understand it all, and no further considering. But by hearing and considering carefully, it becomes more clear that actually it's not understood. It's not the way we've always thought about the world. And just hearing those words needs a lot of very careful considering before they're understood. And just to give another example, because we discussed this before, like we think what is touched is hardness and it's obvious, but usually we're used to thinking of something solid that is touched, something like a table or the solidity of it's a something there, not just the characteristic of hardness that is touched or softness at a moment or heat, because it's always the idea of something that is touched. But hardness isn't something at all. It's just a reality which is experienced, then falls away instantly. But it needs careful considering, otherwise there is the idea of something or something very solid, but it's not like that at all. So it just takes a lot of careful considering. Otherwise one thinks it's clear, it's obvious, oh, that heat is touched and sometimes the cup is hot and sometimes it's cold, but it's still the idea of something that's hot or something that's cold. It's not the understanding of just that rupa at that moment.
So what would be an example of considering not carefully?
I think
considering but not carefully.
Yes, just thinking that it's clear and it's obvious, but not really considering the implications. One hears that it's heat that is touched or hardness, and one thinks, oh yes, that's obvious. But actually in one's mind, one still has the idea of something hot or something hard. That's not considering carefully. So considering carefully means beginning to understand it's quite different from how one's always thought about life or thought about the truth at this moment. Like one hears, it's seeing which sees, and considering not carefully means, oh yes, that's obvious, I see. But the point was not I see, it's just seeing itself which sees. So one hears about Sutta Maya Panya, this is understanding about what is heard. But in order for it to be Chinta Maya Panya, it has to be the understanding based on considering carefully. Like we may hear about these different realities that Jan's talking about, or the Buddha taught, and then go away, forget all about it completely. It's not the considering carefully about the meaning of realities and life now.
And I think most of us go through life with the assumption that if something is sufficiently explained to us, then we'll be capable of understanding it. So if we approach the Dhamma on the same basis, then we'll think, okay, well, it's just as long as I'm given an explanation, everything will be clear. This would be consideration that is not careful, because there's the anticipation of of being able to understand. Careful consideration implies that there's no expectation of being able to understand what is being considered. At the moment, it's a recognition of the limitation of one's own understandings, the lack of developed understanding, and that there's still a long way to go before even the basic things spoken of by the Buddha can be directly understood or verified.
Ajahn, it seems that even though some of the considerations, such as when we talk about how each of the Mahabhuta Rupas condition each other, is not something that we can experience. We can consider, for example, as you said, that visible object must arise with other Mahabhuta Rupas, be conditioned by the Mahabhuta Rupas and all that. But it seems that even though we cannot understand all this yet directly, and it's far from understanding, still in the meantime, it also seems to condition more confidence in the Buddha's teachings. Therefore, also, we want to hear more. It conditions more confidence, and we know that then we need to hear this more and more.
And just hearing is not enough, because there must be understanding the meaning of the word. Without thinking or considering carefully, how can there be such understanding? We can change the subject of thinking. For example, now, let's think about the I. If you don't want to understand the reality which can be seen and the reality which sees, so you think of I, you believe that there is I. So what is the I, and what is its characteristic? Now, there is that which is seen, and it has its own characteristic to be considered. The truth of it, that it cannot be other thing else. It just is a reality which has that only characteristic, which can be seen only, not can be touched, not can be thought about, because seeing is not the moment of thinking. Thinking about what is seen is not the direct or the moment when there is seeing. So that if there is a belief of self or I, how to know and understand that if it's real? Where is it?
Also, it seems, Achan, that it is going to be that when we listen, there will be a lot of misunderstanding on and on, again and again. So the whole process is the correcting one's views, and it has to go on and on. Otherwise, the misunderstanding will also accumulate.
That's why we learn to consider about the truth of that which appears as it is. It cannot be any other thing. Hardness cannot be taken for anything or I at all. It is always hard. It cannot be changed to be smell or taste or anything or I at all. Hardness is hardness. It cannot be I. It cannot be my body. It cannot be my finger or anything, because it's only hardness. It is hard, that, as everyone knows, which can be known. So what about the I, the thought about I, self, or me? How do you think about that? What reality is that? Is it real, or it is just only misunderstanding, taking the shape and form of that which arises and falls away very rapidly, successfully all the time, succeedingly all the time? See, unknown that now what arises and what falls away. But the truth is that it can be directly understanding of just one reality at a time, because they are different. To understand seeing and to understand hearing, and to understand sound and to understand that which disappears can be any moment because it's there to be known, to be thought about carefully as its truth, that it cannot be anyone or anything at all. It has to be only one reality, which is hard, which is seen, or whatever is so many realities in a day. And in truth, whatever arises is that just a moment of appearing and then gone, never to return. So in samsara, can you find that which you had experienced yesterday? See, where was those moments? Not now at all. And this is life. So where is the I? Or where is the self? Can anyone explain about it? When it's not real, no one can talk about it at all. Just think about it with the idea of it's something there as I. But what is its characteristic if it's real? As any reality which is real, we can talk about that which is real, like seeing. It's real because it experiences. So there is the understanding that there is the reality which can experience an object. And there are those reality which cannot experience anything at all. No matter in this life, in this world, in other world, in the universes. Dhamma is Dhamma, exactly the same. That's why there can be the beginning of understanding what's meant by no one, anatta, no self, sunyata, never be there at all, just gone all the time. So how can we take that which is not there as I? Impossible. This is the beginning to understand the word. All dhammas are anatta, self, no one, and no thing at all.
So, Ajahn, what you're saying is that, I mean, we all have heard, as Sarah was saying earlier and John was saying earlier, that we've all heard about dhammas, about seeing, visible object, hearing, sound, thinking, feeling, and all that. But just to, and what you're explaining is just to remember that it is what appears now that is the object of right understanding requires a lot of right consideration.
What is remember? See, can remember understand? Or it just remember without understanding? That's why
Remember is sanya, but I was referring to having the sati too.
that's one word Dhamma. It means reality, absolute reality. No one there, nothing there at all. Otherwise, we just remember the word Dhamma without understanding the truth or the meaning of it. And that's just the point of the teaching of the Buddha, to understand the truth of everything as it is, as anatta. That's why if there's no understanding the word Dhamma, just take it as memory. Dhamma, 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 no meaning at all. But what is Dhamma? If we don't use the word Dhamma, it means what is real. It's real. So Dhamma is the absolute reality of each reality as it is. Otherwise, we take Dhamma for I, not understanding what's meant by just one word, Dhamma. That's why we learn to understand the word of the Buddha, just one word at a time, to be pariyatti, which means skillful, skill of understanding the reality represented by different words, to make it known as it's true.
And I think the point is also that the listening is not just for the sake of remembering or because one enjoys listening or because one can meet one's friends or something like this, but actually be careful considering about dharmas is the only way that all the answers about the truth of life can be answered. It's actually the only truth that makes sense, that explains what life is this very moment. and without, for example, hearing and considering about the various rupas and how they depend on Patawi and other primaries as base, there's no way, no explanation about why what is seen now is different at each moment and how it's conditioned in different ways and is so anatta, not in anyone's control at all. And this is the reason that it conditions thinking about different people and different places, but without understanding about how the different rupas condition each other at each moment and depend on the primaries, and how there is visible object in each group of rupas. It would be impossible to explain or understand why it seems they're seeing different people and different things now, why there are different shapes and forms and thinking about different ideas. So it has to come back to the understanding of the rupas and the conditioning nature of them, how the sound now has to be conditioned by hardness and temperature, otherwise it couldn't be this particular way, different from a moment ago. So I think it's the careful considering that is the only way to understand the anatterness of realities, not in anyone's control, each conditioned in different ways. But without hearing these details and considering a lot, it could never be known. And it may seem we're just repeating, but the careful considering is a degree of understanding, and it grows deeper and deeper and deeper until it conditions direct understanding of seeing now just the reality which sees, different from what is seen at this moment. But without careful considering, impossible to understand those realities that we've heard so much about.
Besides, I think given the who we are, what we are, so much ignorance and other kusala, we all need to start again and again, therefore consider again and again.
And the main point is it's not yours or my or anyone's ignorance or I or you or anyone who starts again, but life starts again at each moment. Seeing now is different from seeing a moment ago. Ignorance now is different from ignorance a moment ago. So different realities arising and falling away all the time, and understanding can dart in anytime, just like Loba usually does, completely conditioned and unexpected. So it's not anyone who does anything or anyone who begins again, but the careful considering leads to the understanding the nature that of these dharmas arising at each moment by their own conditions. So it leads to less idea of I doing anything at all. So one can live more easily without that idea of anything to be done.
But the point is that that understanding which you say darts in is not going to be direct understanding anytime soon. It's going to be a lot of, it needs a lot of Sutta Maya Panya, Chinta Maya Panya before there is direct.
On conditions each moment unexpectedly, who knows at each moment what kind of understanding may arise. So the best thing is no expectations, just each moment at a time, not clinging or wishing or expecting or thinking it should be this way or that way. Who knows at the next moment whether it will be attachment or ignorance or understanding or what degree. So this is what we were talking about the other day by contentment, just accepting whatever is conditioned at this moment without thinking or expecting it to be any other way. Otherwise, if we say, oh, it's going to be just attachment, or there's not going to be understanding, or it's only going to be this, it's I again hindering, thinking it will be this way or that way, not just understanding and being content with what is conditioned at this very moment. I think the expectations come in all the time, hindering the path, hindering the development of understanding, thinking it should be this way or it should be like this. But what about at this moment, just understanding the reality, seeing right now as seeing, or hearing just now as hearing, naturally, without thinking of any agenda at all. And it's this understanding that can condition direct understanding even right now of reality, because it's just that which is visible, which is seen, just sound which is heard. So it's not a matter of how many years or how many aeons. There has to be the careful considering, who knows at this moment. And the understanding conditions more and more confidence in the truth. So there are less and less questions about, well, how do you know it's only seeing which sees, or how do you know it's only one moment, or how do you know there must be different rupas together? Because the understanding leads to less doubt, more confidence that what is taught is correct.
If there's no more questions on this particular topic, I'd like to move to another. I'd like to go back to the conversation a couple of weeks ago on Kojara, all three levels of Kojara, and knowing that the Kojara is an understanding of an object, the object that is understood, various levels of it. When we talk about the object that is understood, I guess I'm thinking it probably refers to several things. One of them, the object understood at any moment. Is it all types of objects? For instance, visible object. Is there, if there are more accumulations, for instance, for the understanding of visible object, can we look at visible object generally? And I don't mean all of them at a moment. I mean many moments of them. Is more Upanisya Kojara for particular objects?
Just briefly before Ajahn will give a detailed answer, but I was reflecting on this subject recently, and I know that Gochara is normally translated as resort or field,
Yes.
something
Yeah.
like that. So, to my understanding, the Buddha is reinterpreting this term resort, because the question being asked at the time was, what is the proper resort? What is the proper something else? And he gives an answer explaining that the proper resort is the right object of understanding, or is understanding the object. So he is explaining there are different levels of understanding in relation to the object. He gives them different names. But really, to me, it's about understanding rather than about the object, because the object is always, as we know, a conditioned reality, any conditioned reality. And it doesn't matter which one. There's nowhere in the teachings is it said that some conditioned realities are to be experienced or understood more than others, as far as I know. Of course, different suttas, different realities are discussed. The understanding of different realities is discussed in detail, but generally speaking, in many, many suttas, the Buddha just enumerates in some way or another all realities, like when he talks about the habits or the dhatus, without discrimination. So I don't see that we need to focus too much on this term resort or object, but on the understanding that is being, the levels of understanding that are being described.
And it's referring, like you said, to the object which is commonly understood. For example, if sound is never understood, it's not the Upanisya Gochara, but if visible object is understood, then at that moment it is Upanisya Gochara. So it depends on the accumulations and the object which is understood at that moment. So the more understanding there is that it is just visible object that's seen, no matter what visible object, it is just visible object. So when one hears about visible object, there is some understanding it's just that reality which is seen. It's Upanisya Gochara at that moment, no matter what visible object it is. And the same with sound or any other reality, like hardness. We're talking about hardness. So by considering that it is just hardness that's touched at this moment, nothing there, nothing solid at all, just hardness. It's Upanisya Gochara at that moment, the object of wise consideration, of pariyatti understanding. But if someone else hears about hardness and there's no understanding, then it's not Upanisya Gochara. So it's the object that is understood. So for the wise, they could hear about any reality and there's instant understanding of it as Upanisya Gochara. But this is why we have to hear about different realities and have to consider carefully. Otherwise, there cannot be any accumulation of that Upanisya Gochara, of that object.
And just
So,
to
Sarah,
what I was saying, proper conduct and proper resort are the two things that the Buddha was talking about here, conduct and resort. So there's a traditional notion that for a bhikkhu, there's a proper way of acting and a proper place to be as the resort. But the Buddha is explaining the proper resort is having the right object of understanding.
Sarah, up until now, I've been thinking in terms in this subject, for example, Upanisya Gochara, in a sort of a generalized way as understanding the objects that appear, that are possible to be understood in daily life, and repeatedly being brought back to those with understanding. But you were just explaining that when the object is not being experienced at that time, then it's not Upanisya Gochara. Can you say something more?
For example, you mentioned sanya earlier. So someone may just have a conventional idea of remembrance or memory. So it's not Upanisya Gochara because it's thinking about memory in the conventional way. And this is why we always say it has to be one word understood carefully at a time. But when there's wise reflection on the nature of memory at this moment, the marking of what is seen now, the marking of what is heard now, then when one hears about sanya or memory, it becomes the Upanisya Gochara. There is more and more understanding of what sanya or memory is. So it goes together with the careful consideration. And the same with anything else. One may hear about phassa, contact, but if there's no understanding of what phassa is, even at the pariyatti level, one just hears that there's phassa at each moment, and some people think that it's a physical thing. This then of course it's not Upanisya Gochara, but by considering carefully about how Phassa is the mental factor that has to accompany each citta, and without Phassa contacting an object, there couldn't be any experience of that object. Gradually, through that consideration, it becomes Upanisya Gochara, and the understanding accumulates in this way. So it's not just a general, well, any object is Gochara. It has to be the objects that are understood, the realities which are understood. And gradually, through hearing these details and considering carefully, that understanding becomes a protection from wrong understanding or going wrong or trying to catch realities or expecting it will be this way or that way. And this is how the understanding leads to Araka Gochara, becomes a protection from wrong view and other akusala.
So it seems then that moments of, let's call it right consideration, of wise consideration, lead to the accumulation of such with regard to specific objects, although not necessarily the object arising at the moment. And that is the level of the level of Upanisya Gochara. Is that right?
It's like pariyati, so it's the wise consideration about particular realities. For example, if one's never heard about Bhavanga-cittas and there's no understanding of Bhavanga-cittas, or how the Bhavanga-cittas even now in between different processes, then when one hears that word Bhavanga-citta, it can't be Upanisya Gochara, because there hasn't been consideration about the meaning or what the reality is. So any reality at all, but it has to be the realities which have been considered and which there is some understanding of. And that's why we have these discussions. And like you say, that's how that understanding accumulates by Upanisya Pachya, Pakatu Upanisya Pachya, accumulates in this way, leading to direct understanding of realities. And again, that would not be of any reality. It has to be of those realities which are their accumulations to understand at this moment.
So Sarah, roughly, we could say that Suttamaya Panya, Chintamaya Panya level of understanding is Upanisya Gochara. When it's Bhavanamaya Panya, then it's Araka Gochara.
I think that when it's Bhavanamaya Panya, then it's referring to direct understanding, which is Upanibandha Gochara. Upanibandha Gochara is direct understanding. So the Upanisya Gochara and the Araka Gochara, it refers to the accumulation of the Pariyati understanding, the Suttamaya Panya, the Chintamaya Panya, which accumulates and becomes firmer and firmer, supported by the various paramis until it is Bhavanamaya Panya or Upanibandha Gochara. And the other day when we were talking about the Sampajanyas, it's the same. It's referring to different kinds of understanding, which are pariyati, leading to asamoha sampajanya, the direct understanding of realities without delusion. So different ways of considering realities. And again, no rule, no expectation. Even if there is direct understanding now, it doesn't mean there isn't pariyatti understanding afterwards most of the time.
Araka Kojara. That is the stage, the level, the understanding that that is protection against akusala. And it sounds like with the accumulation of more Upanishya Kojara with regard to certain objects, again, objects that have been wisely considered, that it gets to the strength where it can, there can be enough, what is it? Awareness and understanding that there is a protection against akusala thinking, akusala actions because of that understanding?
Because of the understanding and the development of the other wholesome factors, sati and the other paramis and other wholesome, the understanding of the truth and the patience, and they develop together with that understanding, which leads to the moving away from any wrong view or wrong practice or strong akusala of one kind or another. And of course, it doesn't mean there's not going to be lots of akusala, even strong akusala, but gradually the understanding supported by these other wholesome qualities works its way. So there's less inclination to go wrong, less inclination to harm, for example, because one knows that in reality there's no being, no one there. So that understanding has its effect. So less inclination to perform such deeds.
In the Visuddhimagga, proper resort as guarding Araka Gochara, it quotes from the Nidana. It says, a bhikkhu having entered inside a house, having gone into a street, goes with downcast eyes, seeing the length of a plough yoke, restrained, not looking at an elephant, not looking at a horse, a carriage, a pedestrian, a woman, a man, not looking up, not looking down, not staring this way and that, end quote. This is called resort, proper resort as guarding. So what is being explained there is not actually a particular conduct, but the level of kusala, citta, of understanding. That means that there is no longer a distraction from what is being experienced through the through the eye door in regard to whatever his mental development is happening at that moment. Maybe it's a reference to his subject of contemplation or whatever. So this gives an idea of the level of understanding that is being referred to. I say it's not a matter of not looking this way and that. It's a matter of the wholesome mental state that means there's no interest in looking this way and that.
Right.
Yeah, not because it's being regulated at all, but the natural inclination is now that there's no interest in that side of things.
And we know that guarding is the function of sati, so understand leads to development of sati and all wholesome qualities, and they in turn support the understanding. Not anyone doing anything or trying to do anything, but just naturally more protection through that development of understanding.
Okay, thank you. This is very helpful.
Now I'm a bit confused. When it comes to Upanishad, Araka Gochara, you seem to referring to not just the moment of understanding the object at that moment, the level of understanding, but also you go on to talk about not having the inclination to look at other things or being distracted and all that. and why, when it's Upanishad Gochara, you are precisely talking about the one moment of understanding.
Because it's referring to how the development and understanding leads to the gradual protection from akusala, the gradual development of other wholesome qualities together through that understanding of realities. It doesn't mean there's understanding of realities all the time, but it leads to that effect in life. For example, there may be less inclination to yell at one's colleague at work because one knows that the real problem is not the colleague's action, but the unwholesome tendencies. It doesn't mean there won't be that speaking harshly, but gradually the understanding works its way, and that's what it's pointing to. Sometimes the monk will look up and look around and be as distracted as usual, but gradually the effect of understanding has that effect of leading to more wholesomeness, more protection in life. So it's just referring to really how the paramis and wholesome qualities develop with understanding.
Actually, I was also talking in the same way when we were talking earlier, Upanishad Gochara. It's the habitual coming back to the objects of the moment. I mean, whatever the objects in daily life with understanding. So I thought that was the meaning.
I think it goes together. For example, coming back to the monk walking along, when there's more understanding, it's only visible object seen or only sound heard, then does it matter so much what is seen or what is heard, because it's still just visible object or sound. So gradually there's less finding importance in what is seen or what is heard. Of course, attachment is still there, but one knows it's just a visible object that passes instantly, not worth being so attached to or minding so much about. Or with sound, it's just that sound and then gone instantly. So gradually the understanding leads to less attachment. And that was what we were talking about on Saturday, the different degrees of attachment. So there may still be so much attachment to what is seen at this moment, but through understanding working its way by knowing that it's just an experience of what is seen as a result of karma and then gone instantly, gradually it's less important. So it develops together. It is referring to the understanding of realities and how it leads gradually to a protection from akusala until, for example, when it's direct understanding at the level of sotapanna, no chance or thought of any wrong view arising because it's eradicated, or doubt. So one sees that that understanding has worked its way and become more and more protection until the kilesa are eradicated stage by stage. Perhaps Ajahn would like to add more.
To me, I think that the most important thing is to have more confidence on the truth that actually there's no one among some, because this is the beginning to understand what Dhamma is. Otherwise, we just say that it's Dhamma, but it's I who just say that. So in order to have more firm understanding and clearly about the word of each word of the Buddha, there should be one's own considering whether how much there is the understanding of Dhamma right now as not self. But in the beginning, from hearing, let's consider the truth of the word. whether it's true or not. That actually what appears cannot be taken for anything to be I or things, but actually Dhamma must be the reality, the absolute reality, which no one can make it arise, because actually Dhamma is Dhamma, no one and nothing at all. When there is firm understanding of this, it will condition to follow the words of the Buddha carefully, just to understand. Otherwise, it is always I who think about this or think about that subject, on and on. But what about this moment? Because without the understanding of this moment as it's taught, it's impossible to let go the idea of self, to eliminate the clinging to that which is always object of attachment. That's why understanding there's so lot of ignorance and misunderstanding of reality as self. It takes time to be sure by oneself to understand that actually there is no I at any moment of seeing, hearing, or talking about anything at all. That's why don't just use the word Dhamma, but understand what Dhamma is, so that there can be the understanding of no I at all. There are only different Dhammas to be known more and more in order to understand it better and better. And this is the only way to eradicate or eliminate the idea of self, stage by stage. For example, right now, when one heard the word Dhamma from anyone, the understanding is that no self and no thing. They're talking about the absolute truth. Whatever is said by the Buddha must be the truth of each reality to be understand more and more and more and more. And the more understanding of the Dhamma as Dhamma, it can lead to less and less ignorance of self and things. Otherwise, we want to understand this and that, but the truth of it is not just the word, but the characteristic of reality. For example, we can say that all reality which appears is a Dhamma, each different one. That is not enough, because as long as there is seeing, it's still something, things, people, all the time, until the understanding of what is heard more and more clearer and clearer can condition the moment of clear understanding of no one at all, little by little, until it can condition the moment of direct awareness. No thinking, no thought about what is there in words, but the experiences of that cannot be changed from its characteristic. The truth of that characteristic can appear to the higher understanding, which cannot just develop by ignorance, but by from hearing again and again and consider what is there again and again, and don't miss the word Dhamma as I say Dhamma. I think it's Dhamma, but whatever is there, even thinking is Dhamma. Otherwise, the more we study, we don't pay attention to the reality which appears, that it is as one is thought about or learned about or heard about. For example, the Upanishad Kojara. See, we have to understand what is Kojara and what is Upanishad. Otherwise, we think that we understand that as that which I have heard, but not more, no more understanding from considering the truth of it. For example, okay, what is experience? Just that is aramana, not the other. So at this moment, there are moments of seeing, and what is seen is aramana, because aramana means whatever citta experiences, that which is experienced, only that is aramana. do we know enough of aramana and of citta yet? That's why we hear more and more to see that actually there cannot be anything except Dhamma, a reality which is uncontrollable, which is sunyata, never be there anymore, just only when it appears is there. But even that, from the teaching of the Buddha, even now, there is seeing many, many moments, but in reality, much more quicker than that. That's why we learn the details of realities to understand better and better that actually there is no self. That's why don't be satisfied from just hearing the word and understand the translation or just the meaning. But what about the truth of it? Because when we talk about arama, whatever that citta experiences, no matter it is the truth or not the truth, but citta thinks about it as it is, like I can do that, I can make this, something like that. While in reality, there's no understanding enough of the word Dhamma. That's why to understand Dhamma, it has to be one's own considering whether is it true that actually whatever is there by no one but by conditions. So it does not stay, it just appear and then disappear. And that cannot be taken for self. This is the beginning to understand Dhamma. And while listening to the words of the teaching, he talks about that which is appearing. For example, what appears now, is it aramana or kojara? See, two different words. That's why there have to be the understanding of what is the difference. Because the truth, the absolute truth is there, but it does not show up as it is. But the rapidity of the succession of the arising and falling away made known as something permanent and say that is wrong. That's why we listen to understand any word carefully to understand the truth of it. For example, now, seeing is that which is seen, and that which is seen is not the truth of it, as long as there's no understanding about the truth of it. It has to be something all the time that is not the truth. That's why we have to understand whatever appears now. For example, anyone who talk about Kojara, even Upanishad Kojara, Araka Kojara, Upanibandha Kojara, each word should be studied carefully until it is right understanding anywhere, anytime. When there is a hearing of this word, right understanding is there. And that is only the intellect understanding or pariyatti, which can condition the moment of direct awareness to realize the truth which is there as kojara, see, which means the object, the aramana of the Buddha. We call it Father in translation, because he taught the children or whatever to know the truth of it. That's why not just hearing about aramana and thinking that aramana is kojara, and what is kojara, why is kojara, not only aramana. For example, right now, without any understanding at all, what appears is aramana, because citta experienced that, only that, not other at all. But no thought about that at any time of seeing yet. It means that not enough understanding of the truth of Dhamma to understand Dhamma as no one at all. When there is understanding firmly, we understand the word, each word as Dhamma, different Dhamma, the profundity of Dhamma, the subtleness, the subtlety of Dhamma. See, that's why we learn Dhamma from moment to moment, which is there to be known. Otherwise, it's only the memory, and it cannot be remembered forever or all time because of not enough understanding. That's why, in order to understand whether this is aramna, general aramna, or culture, which cannot be the object of anyone at all, only object of those who understand the truth from the Buddha's teachings. See, so one realizes it's one's own understanding, not just understand the words, but about this moment, whether each word should be carefully understood like aramana for sure. And that aramana is the truth that it is there to be known. But the truth of it does not appear as it is, as that which has been there. Before that moment of seeing, there's no seeing. As the moment of seeing, there's no seeing. So how can there be the object which you see last longer than that for the other moment when the process is on, because the object is no more there. It's gone completely. See, to understand the truth of nothingness, to understand the truth that everything arises and falls away, cannot be taken for something permanent at all. So, realizing that without the teachings of the Buddha, everyone lives in the world of ignorance, in darkness, not understanding what is there as it is, just like in a dream. When one does not wake up yet, who knows that it's a dream? So we live in the world of fantasy world, dream, not understanding the truth of it at all, until right understanding begin to understand, to wake up little by little to understand the truth. That's why even what the truth of the word of the Buddha is studied and known as it is, but it does not the object of understanding at moment of experiencing. Yet that's why right understanding knows the level of understanding, whether it is only intellectual understanding about that which is there only very shortly, but it doesn't appear yet until Panya is strong enough. So the object appears well as it is. So what we are listening should be this moment, which is there to be understood. And that is a careful study from the very beginning. Whether are you sure? Do you know now that what is the meaning of Dhamma? Not just everything is Dhamma, but what is Dhamma? And what is what is meant by Dhamma? It cannot be anything else except its own characteristic, which is conditioned just to be that. So very shortly and then gone. And this will begin to understand better that right understanding has so many levels. And as long as there's no understanding of the word clearly about no one, no self, the self is there all the time until there is more and more understanding of the truth of what appears, then it begins to be another level of understanding because it can understand what we heard at the moment when it's there. So it takes quite a long time, but study carefully about each word as it is, which conformed with other different words that he taught for 45 years, like Kujara and then Aram. See, different. Even the object is the same, but the teachings bring about the level of understanding, whether how much is there. Is it enough to be Uppa, Nisya, Kujara, and so on? And now the Uppa, Nisya, Pakatupa, Nisya is daily life. That's why it's not the understanding of the Buddha enough yet to know about Dhamma. See, to understand Dhamma, just the word Dhamma, more and more clearer and clearer, that it's no one. So listening to his words, thinking carefully that it's now. What is there now? Aramana, as usual? Or is it Kojara, which can be Upanishya, like the Aramana, which is the Upanishya for a long, long time, not to understand the truth. So it's not just to be heard, but to be thought carefully to understand it as Dhamma. See, just use that word, which means that there is the understanding of Dhamma as no one and no thing and no self. It's all about the absolute truth, which is so very difficult to understand or to understand clearer and clearer. It needs more time and more careful study too. So one can answer when there is the understanding of the Upanishad Kudra, whether it's there now or not yet. Otherwise, it's useless because it's only remembering the word. But what about now? And now, what is there? Even understanding or not understanding, it's not self. It's Dhamma. See? If we don't discuss in details like this, who knows? They think that they heard the word Dhamma and they understand Dhamma, but actually, where's Dhamma? Is it now Dhamma? And what is the understanding of Dhamma right now as Dhamma? That's why it has to be Satya Parami with Virya Parami and Khanti Parami to understand deeper and deeper whether how much understanding is there at moment of listening to the words of the Buddha. Like Kun John and Sarah talk about the three kinds of Kojara.
Ajahn, so can you hear me?
Yes.
So now Aramana is now, but we everything now appear that something, but not Aramana, the object of understanding. It is right?
Because as long as you take something permanent as I and things, is that true?
No. No, not true.
That's why we learn to understand the truth of whatever appears in order to understand that actually what is meant by just one word, Dhamma. Is the Dhamma now?
Dhamma is now, but not at the level of right understanding of the Upanishad Gochara.
Okay, that which cannot or do not understand is Dhamma.
Yes, but
what is Dhamma?
Dhamma is nothing. Is no one there. Is just the object of understanding of the direct understanding with awareness.
So one knows that even one says that Dhamma is no one, but actually the idea of one is still there as long as there's not enough understanding of whatever appears as Dhamma as it is. not just like what we think that is Dhamma, but it's something. Actually, Dhamma cannot be something permanent. Each Dhamma which is conditioned to arise falls away instantly, and this is the truth. That's why this level of understanding is intellectual understanding. But when it's about what is there now as object, and the understanding begins to understand. For example, we know, everyone know, what is seen is only that which is not hard, that which is not Mahaputa Rupa, but it's Arupa, a reality. Why is a reality? Because it's there when there is seeing. How can one say that it's not there? It's there as it is to be seen. And when there's no understanding of this at moment of seeing, one knows that it's not yet clear understanding of what we heard, but it begins to be conditions for the moment of understanding better and better. So the object become clearer and clearer to understanding. Because when there's no understanding at all, no one knows that it's Dhamma. One takes it for something all the time, not understanding what Dhamma is. But when there is the understanding of Dhamma at moment of seeing, one can think about it's not that which as we take before, like things and people and flower. But the truth is that as soon as one closes one's eye, no more anything at all, only darkness or whatever, very slim light or something like that. But the truth is the truth, and the understanding can understand it. That is not what we heard from Uppa Nisaya Kojara, Araka Kojara, Upanibanda Kojara, because it's not yet that level of understanding. So the word of the Buddha is for understanding, which comes from study, listen, thinking, considering, reflecting, careful, very careful, what is right. And as there is the understanding of what is right, there cannot be moment of understand it wrong as before. But it's not yet the moment of just directly experience reality as it is there. Because it has to be strong and very keen, very skillful understanding of the word of the Buddha. That is not just to be known, to be heard, but to understand whatever appears now. So each word is very, very valuable, worthy to understand because it can bring more understanding of what appears like a very the best miracle, which from no understanding at all, and it becomes to be understanding what is there, which hasn't known before, which hasn't been understood the truth of it before. So when there is the understanding of Dhamma, the understanding of whatever appears now is not self, it's only a reality. And then there can be the beginning of study with respect of the truth that can be known from hearing and considering, not just to believe or to think that, oh, it's right to say that Dhamma is nothing and no one.
Thank you, Ajahn. I understand what do you mean about Dhamma? Is what is Dhamma is now? I understand. I appreciate your answer, your explanation about Dhamma. Thank you.
And from understanding the truth of Dhamma, it conditioned the moment to understanding better and better from hearing and considering about what appears more and more until it becomes the moment of direct awareness, but has to be with understanding. Otherwise, it cannot be what we have heard, satipatthana or sati sampajanya, because we have to understand what is sati. When there's the firm understanding of Dhamma, sati is a Dhamma, a reality, not me. See, it begins to develop the understanding of Dhamma as no self, firmer, and just a very little clear at a moment, from moment to moment.
So Ajahn, can you talk a little bit more about the Dhamma is non-stop right now?
Is that right now? Is that what you said?
Say again, I can't hear clearly.
Can you change that which is seen to be different?
No.
And that is the meaning of Dhamma. It's there by conditions. Without the Mahabhuta Rupa, there cannot be that which is seen now, that which can impinge on the eye base. And there must be the eye base or the eye. And how come to be eyes there? Who make it? See, if there's no conditions for the eye to arise, it's impossible. Anyone of anything cannot condition the eye or the eye base at all, the eye sense or whatever you think, the rupa, which is so very different from other rupa, because the other rupa cannot be that which the visible object can impinge on it. So it's not the hardness, it's not the four primary rupas, but it's arupa, because it cannot experience anything. That's why each word of the Buddha is so true that it can be studied and understand that it cannot be taken for anything else, because it is Dhamma, a reality, a conditioned reality. Otherwise, nothing can arise without the proper conditions to be such and such different realities.
Ajahn, can you talk a little bit more about the four primary rupa that can impinge the eye base? It is the four primary rupas, very tiny, you talked about before. So the tiny rupa can appear at the eye space.
Excuse me. We're at, Hun, that's a wonderful question, and hopefully we can discuss it sometime, but we're at the 2-hour limit now.
Okay.
I think it's probably time to let Ajahn go and save that for next week. We can begin with that next week if you like.
Okay, thank you.
It's good to bring up questions near the beginning. Anumodana and Sotika.